All right, everybody. This is the Roaring Lion podcast. I'm Samori Benjamin. I'm being joined by my co-host, Andrew Saunders. How's it going, Drew?
I'm good. Great. It's great to be on the Roaring Lion for one more episode before next year. I'm excited for what the show's going to be like next year.
Yes, now, folks, I'm based in New York and Drew is based in Michigan. And if you all have been paying attention, there's been a lot coming out of Michigan in the sports world, but we'll get to that in a second. First, since the last time we spoke, Zoran Mamdani won the NYC mayoral election. The Democratic Socialists caused quite a stir in New York and nationwide. Despite what some want to say, including our current president of the United States, Mamdani is not a communist. Speaking of our president, I'm sure most of you saw the way Trump buttered up to Mamdani. We can speak about that later. Now, when Mamdani takes over as mayor, he will have to preside over championship parades if and when any of the New York City teams win a championship again. One team that we know won't be raising any trophies, the New York Giants. They have won just 2 games this season and have not walked the cane of heroes in Manhattan since 2011. For those that don't know, the cane of heroes is where the New York City championship teams, when they have a parade, that is the avenue that they walk through. The cane of heroes is what the area is called. Now, the Giants franchise is owned by the Tisch family. Bob Tisch was the longtime co-owner, and after his passing in 2005, his share of the team was taken over by his son, Steve Tisch. New York City's current police commissioner, Jessica Tisch, is the great grandniece of Bob Tisch. Jessica's father, Lawrence, is the brother of Bob Tisch. The police commissioner's brother, Benjamin Tisch, made some comments at a charity gala in New York about how Mayor-elect Mamdani was an enemy of the Jewish people. The gala was the annual Met Council held in Columbus Circle. Benjamin Tisch is the top executive of the wealthy Lowe's Corporation. Police Commissioner Tisch apologized to Mamdani and his team about her brother's comments. And of course, the Lowe's Corporation is run by the Tisch family. New York's top cop said, this is a quote, Jessica Tisch, she said, quote, I understand the fear in the Jewish community. My sincere belief is that the mayor-elect will live up to the commitment he's made to be a mayor for all New Yorkers, including the Jewish community, end quote. The World Cup, folks, is coming to the United States this summer. This is the first time the United States will host the event since 1994. FIFA, which is soccer's international governing body, held the World Cup draw at the White House last week. The World Cup draw simply lays out which countries are playing which at the start of the tournament. And now, for the first time in its history, FIFA has created an award. The name of that award? The FIFA Peace Prize, folks. That's right. The inaugural FIFA Peace Prize was awarded to President Trump, who said receiving the award was one of the biggest honors of his life. Trump, of course, was disappointed when he was not awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, which instead was given to Venezuela's Maria Corina Machado. Because of his part in the Gaza peace talks, which is why Trump was upset that he did not get the Nobel Peace Prize. Trump, by the way, had a connection to soccer a few weeks ago when he invited and had in attendance soccer star Cristiano Ronaldo to the White House when he hosted and honored the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. Ronaldo said, Trump, quote, is one of the guys who can help to change the world, end quote. And finally, folks, at the World Cup draw event in DC, Trump said, quote, I don't need prizes. I need to save lives when asked if winning the award conflicts with his pledge to strike Venezuela. He said, quote, I also want to run a great country, end quote. Drew?
Yeah. And now that we have are a year into the second Trump term, uh, it is important to step back and see where we are. Trump's won re-election by campaigning on affordability, and now he calls it a Democratic hoax for two reasons. Um, we brought up Mamdani. Mamdani is a fascinating feature, but remember, New York City mayors don't tend to get long honeymoons. The Roaring Lions, we were very interested in how well he actually sticks the landing once the mayor actually replaces Eric Adams at the beginning of this upcoming year. Tariffs are something that the president believes in religiously, as someone on Pod Save America put it the day that this was recorded. And and of course we've covered on the Roaring Line how he's implemented all of those and how it's snarled supply chains. And the thing is, tariffs are not bad in and of themselves. It's just that they can't be used as a cure-all the way that the president has tried to use them. As just about every credible economist has predicted, all they do is restrict trade for foreign goods by implementing a tax on the American companies that import products, which any competently run business is always going to move on to the consumer. And now that the economy keeps getting worse for the average American, people are showing up on the polls to express their discontent. Mamdani's victory for the left came in the same night as Abigail Spanberger won the Virginia governor's mansion, and Mikey Sherrill became the governor-elect of New Jersey. Those are two much more moderate liberals who beat their opponents by focusing on the same affordability issue. Just a couple days before we recorded this episode, Miami actually elected their first female mayor, and she is the first Democrat to beat the Republican candidate in that city in 28 years. Trump won Miami-Dade last year by 55.4%, according to Politico. And then on December 10, Mayor-elect Aline Higgins beat the Trump-backed candidate Emilio Gonzalez by no less than 18 points. And my first question to you, Samori, is what's the most surprising thing in the special election? There was a special election also recently for Tennessee's 7th district. In that race, this is a race for a district that Trump won last year by a huge margin. And the Republican did win. It's been one of the few Republicans who's won these off year elections, but it was only by 53.9% according to the New York Times. This really striking thing is that Afton Bain, the Democrat, wasn't a milk toast moderate. She was an out and proud progressive leftist Democrat, and she still came within striking distance of winning. The political commentator and campaign runner James Carville, a longtime Democratic strategist who powered Bill Clinton's presidential campaign back in 1992, he's actually said on a podcast that if we went into a lab and created the worst possible Democrat to run in this district, they would have run her, and yet she still almost won. That shows that the Republicans are in rough shape because of Trump's handling of the economy. And do you think it's likely that the situation is going to be the same roughly a year from now if Trump doesn't turn things around?
I think, like you said, months ago when Trump was just beginning his second run as president and he started all the tariffs, which was wrecking the economy. And you said then that you thought that the tide was going to turn and that Trump was going to start to lose support. And so, right here, what you said is coming true. So, I think it's going to continue to go down this path that you are explaining now and haven't been explaining for several months.
Yeah. And of course, a lot of people were surprised by the changes in voting patterns among young men, among voters of color, and in the boroughs of New York, there were like Harris still won New York, obviously, but there's a surprising number of people who voted for Trump on the affordability issue. What have you noticed about the cost of living in New York, and how has it affected the New Yorkers some New Yorkers who voted for him last time in hopes that he would bring grocery prices and rent down?
Yeah, the cost of living in New York has just continued to go up and up and up over the years. It continues to get more and more expensive. And uh, you know, I don't know anybody in New York who voted for Trump because they felt like he was going to make the economy better. He was going to make the city more affordable. So in New York, I don't know anyone who voted for him for that reason. I don't know a whole lot of people in New York who voted for Trump, uh, but I definitely feel like Mamdani. I mean, as you pointed out earlier in your essay, that a lot of New York mayors, the honeymoon end for them quick, and you're right about that because my father told me he said that New York is where mayors. What he said? He said like New York is like a graveyard for mayors. It's where like people's political career comes to die when you run for mayor, when you're mayor in New York City because they're criticized so heavily. They're torn down. A lot of people are not happy with them once they get in there. But it's going to be interesting because obviously a lot of people were against Mamdani because they want to act like he's a communist and some of his views. There's some people who like found it to be so abstract, but obviously most New Yorkers want him in office for a reason. It's because the city is so unaffordable for most New Yorkers, so people want to see a change. So I think that a lot of New Yorkers are going to definitely support him. Uh, a lot of people, of course, you're going to have those who, the small percentage who are going to be upset from the beginning, but it's going to be interesting because, like I said, there are a lot of people in New York who are struggling, and so it's not a surprise to me that he won. So it's going to be interesting to see when he gets into office, what the support is like, and how many people who voted for him are happy with what he's doing.
Yeah, the two most spectacular examples in our lifetimes, I think, are Rudy Giuliani and Bill de Blasio. Both of them thought that they would be president after they were mayor of New York City, and then both had presidential campaigns that were, embarrassing, to put it politely. Um, but yeah, the most interesting takeaway for me is that Trump seems to be throwing up his hands and walking away from affordability because the solutions have, just objectively speaking, just plain not worked. He did a rally a couple of days. I think I'm right in saying it was the first rally that he did since the election, which is unusual for him, where he went through the greatest hits of last decade. Talk and He even at one point complained that his staff told him he had to go out and campaign about affordability for the midterms. But yeah, but we'll see if he does those in the future, and a lot can change between now and the midterms, obviously. But if Trump can't pivot or change, the story next November might be a bit of the revolt against mismanagement and graft, and for competence and problem solving ahead instead. If that ends up being the case, Democratic socialists like Mamdani made them frustrated as they will become part of a more of a grand coalition running from the center all the way to the left. That can include a lot of leftists, of course, but it's important to remember that the Democrats are still going to be a large tent with a lot of moderates like Abigail Spanberger and all the others. But we're getting close to counting our chickens before they hatch here. We'll be covering all of this next year in the next episode. It's right here at the Roaring Line.
Yes. Now, why is it that you think that Democratic socialists like Mamdani may become frustrated?
Well, just the Democrats are in the doldrums right now, and they have a bunch of left wing support and a bunch of moderate support. And as more and more, and the thing is, there's a bunch of consistent polling where a bunch of independents, who of course are the key voting group in American politics, are swinging more and more from Trump to them, and that is going to include a lot more moderate voices. So, in order to form an effective coalition against Trump, political logic makes it necessary for them to accept that they're going to have to um, uh, make nice with a bunch of center left people, a bunch of center people, and even a handful of center right people who are, the bulwark listeners, and that's that sort of camp.
Got you. Very interesting. Very interesting. Uh, yeah, man. I mean, all good stuff. Now, before we close, I got to ask you, man. University of Michigan, the head coach. I know that's got to be the bigger story where you are. Do you have any thoughts on that? That mess?
It certainly is a mess. I Yeah, I think you're better versed on that. Just yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I
it's
know you're not.
messy.
much of a sports guy, but yeah, but like this is definitely a story that transcends sports and all that. Yeah, man. So it's just a mess. No, I'm just curious. When you were going to what when you went to undergrad, where'd you go?
Oh, undergrad, Eastern Michigan University,
Okay,
which
okay,
is
okay,
down the road basically the uh, from U of M. It's the way that I always describe the difference between Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti, which are like right next to each other. A lot of people describe it the difference like being like Manhattan being and Ann Arbor being Manhattan and Ypsilanti being the outer boroughs. I think like even more specifically, um, the way to think of it is Ann Arbor is Greenwich Village and Ypsilanti is Bushwick.
okay.
So
Yeah,
yeah, and
that's all right.
U of M uh, is Columbia, and the and Eastern is more the city university.
Okay, okay. Got you, got you. Did you ever have any interest in going to University of Michigan?
Yeah, I think everyone who grows up in the area does, and I applied to one thing this year actually. We'll see if we get it or not.
Okay, okay. Well, good luck with that. Yeah, and yeah, but just definitely a wild story coming out of there. That's too bad.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
I
yeah,
just want to.
yeah. Sorry, you finish your thought?
I just want to say, you mentioned Mamdani. You're talking about Trump and his pursuit or lack thereof, or what he said, how he's trying to make costs go down in the country and make things more affordable. When Mamdani and Trump had their meeting at the White House a couple of weeks ago, and they ended up, you know, getting along, at least in front of the cameras, a lot of people were shocked. But one thing is that we know about Trump is like he really likes to be liked, and he likes to be liked. And obviously, a lot of people here in New York like Mamdani, and Mamdani is pushing this affordability, making New York City more affordable. And Trump, that's something like you heard Trump talk about. So Trump was kind of attaching himself to Mamdani's his message of making New York more affordable. Trump was repeating that and saying that he agreed with that. So that's one thing. You said that Trump may get away from the affordability efforts, but it was interesting. He kind of attached himself to Mamdani talking about how he wanted to make New York more affordable for New Yorkers. So that was interesting.
Yeah, and it makes sense for Mamdani to play nice, at least in those circumstances, because he is opposed to everything Trump has ever done. I think it's fair to say, but he also he needs enough room to do his thing without the president of the United States trying to like send the National Guard in to shut the city
Yeah,
down or whatever. And also, I think it's important to remember that Trump is you're right about him wanting to be liked, but also he is fundamentally an outer borough kid who always wanted to break into Manhattan and be part of the elite, and he technically did. He got his building on Fifth Avenue and all the rest of it. There's still buildings across New York that are all named after him, but there's always been a large segment of the old money set of New York that never really welcomed him in really. And there's always been a chip on his shoulder. So I think like as soon as he went to Mamdani mode, he was like he was in his 20s again. He was trying to be an upstart kid who was like trying to marry into one of the wealthy families or be accepted in some way. So, um, but yeah, it's actually if you look at the totality of his life, it's exactly what he always wanted to do because he so desperately wanted to be one of the New York Observer set.
yeah. And now he's not very liked here in New York. Uh, he's not living here in New York. It'll be hard for him to live here right now, but you know, so he definitely, I'm sure in his mind, he wants to get back in the good graces of New Yorkers. So, attaching his wagon to Madani right now could be a way to do that.
Yeah, I don't know how well that's going to work, but that is something that I think he's clearly
Yeah, I know, I
trying.
know, I know. Me either, but I know.